Now, in a sharp change of tone to his normal stance towards Moscow, President Trump says he's very angry with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for questioning Ukraine's leadership. Reports suggest he plans to speak to Putin this week for questioning Zelensky's credibility. In fact, Trump has threatened secondary tariffs on Russian oil. This as Russia's wave of strikes leaves Ukraine in a dire situation. Here's a report.
Russia is hammering Ukraine from all sides. Fire engulfed Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city. The deadly Russian drone strike left the city crippled. Kiev claims at least 2 people were killed and dozens of others were injured. It accuses Russia of carrying out targeting shelling on military hospital and shopping mall. Kharkiv holds a strategic significance for Russia. It is a key military and logistical site close to Russia's border.
I thought that the drone was gliding around to find where to hit. I ran into another room when there was a hit. I was hit by shrapnel, and in front of my face, a wooden bar fell. That's when I had already farewelled life, and I think I have a concussion.
Russia is using heavy artillery fire on the front lines as Ukrainian cities reel from the latest onslaught. These are the images of Russian snipers in thermal camouflage suits engaging Ukrainian troops 600 feet away. Blending in with the topography, Russian soldiers remain invisible to the Ukrainian drones, indicating how the warfare is swiftly changing on the Eastern Front. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is making a desperate plea to the world, claiming that Russia is dividing the US and Europe. He called for more pressure to be put on Moscow in light of the daily barrage of Russian strikes.
It is impossible to ignore the hundreds of shaheds every night. We expect a response, a serious one. We are working toward a response. A strong response is urgently needed, above all from the US, from Europe, from everyone in the world who has placed their bets on diplomacy. Russia must be forced into peace. Only pressure will work.
A New York Times report stated even before Trump's return, America's involvement in the war was far deeper than previously understood. It says the secret partnership guided Kiev in its battle strategy and funneled precise targeting information down to the Ukrainian soldiers in the field. The inner workings of this secret partnership have been known only to a small circle of American and Allied officials. But with President Trump seeking rapprochement with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, the prospects for Kiev are narrowing. Ukraine is on the back foot and is left with no options. It remains to be seen how the war will pan out in the coming days without a ceasefire in sight. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Mr. Dov Zakhaim is a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and currently Senior Advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Zakhaim is now joining us live from D.C. Mr. Zakhaim, good to see you and welcome. Before we talk about anything else, I'm sure you have seen the New York Times report on the $66.5 billion that the U.S. Pentagon supplied to Ukraine in terms of weaponry. This was for a course of 3 years before Trump returned to power. How do you think Trump is going to leverage on that, especially in regards to a section of the report which says that former President Biden's administration kept moving its red line?
Well, first of all, you just reported how Mr. Trump is very, very annoyed, and that's to put it mildly, at Putin. I've actually predicted for some time in writing that if Putin tries to run circles around Trump, he will really regret it. Mr. Trump does not like being fooled. He does not like being made a fool of, and he will react very, very strongly. Now, The report, there are two parts to really the New York Times report. One is essentially support that was public. There were lists over and over again of what we were giving the Ukrainians that was public, issued by the Defense Department. And then the report talks about some other support that, quite frankly, was not made public. And as far as I know, the administration has still not confirmed the report. So, you know, it's a journalist's report. I can't really speak about something that the administration has not publicly confirmed.
Right.
However, I can say this. It's clear that had the Biden team given the Ukrainians what the Ukrainians asked for early in the war, and they only gave it to them later in the war, that might have made a huge difference. Simply because the Ukrainians put what we gave them to very good use when they got it. Now, one of the things Mr. Trump can do if he's really, really angry, and it seems he is to allow the Europeans to transfer materiel, all sorts of equipment to Ukraine that has American components. Up to now, that's not been the case. Biden wouldn't do it. And clearly, that would be the quickest way to further support Ukraine. But clearly, the central element of all of this is Putin seems to be trying to play Trump for a fool. And whatever else you'll say about Mr. Trump, he's nobody's fool.
Mr. Zakheim, I actually wanted us to talk about Trump's anger. That was my second question to you. But now that you started with it, let me go on with it. There are visible fault lines even before a breakthrough in the ceasefire is achieved. Apparently, like you put it, Trump is upset with Putin for rejecting a U.S. proposal for an immediate and full 30-day halt in the fighting, and also questioning Zelensky's credibility. How do you think this whole thing is going to play out in the coming days?
Well, first of all, Mr. Trump already made a concession after the Ukrainian-American statement, because what they did was, in fact, there was an agreement not to go after each other's energy facilities, not to go after each other in the Black Sea and open up the Black Sea. But that was not what was in the original proposal. The original proposal was a complete ceasefire. So Trump has already given Putin something. And instead of Putin moving ahead toward a ceasefire, which is what Mr. Trump wants, and not only Mr. Trump, obviously, he questions Zelensky's legitimacy when Trump has been dealing with Zelensky. What does that tell Mr. Trump about how Putin thinks of him? And second of all, Putin is still not moving ahead with the complete ceasefire. And Mr. Trump, apart from what I already said, who does not like being fooled around with, he happens not to have terribly much patience. And he has been putting up with this. He's been patient. And what's clear is that all the Russians are trying to do is stall for time so they can get more ground. That is going to, I believe, Trump is going to be speaking to Putin this week. And I think Trump will be telling Putin he had better cut it out. And that when Trump says he wants a ceasefire, he really means a ceasefire. And if that conversation does not go well, I suspect you will see somewhat of a turnabout in the way Mr. Trump treats the Ukrainians.
Interesting times ahead indeed. I've been talking to Mr. Dov Zakheim. Dov Zakheim, good to see you. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.